Welcome back to another episode of the Crime Scene Insiders. I'm one of your hosts, Angela Davies, and I'm here with my co-host, Dion Watson, and we're going to take you back under the barrier tape.
Today, we are joined by Rachael Medhurst. We met Rachael a few years back now at a conference for the Chartered Society of Forensic Sciences, and we've stayed in touch ever since. Rachael is a digital forensic expert, academic and researcher based at the University of South Wales. And Rachael has worked as a digital forensic investigator in the private sector, and she's conducted casework for police forces across the UK and has served as an expert witness in court. All of this was before joining the University of South Wales, where she's now a senior lecturer in digital forensics, and she's the course lead for the BSc and MSc in digital forensic provisions. At the same time as that, as if she's not busy enough, she's also completing her PhD focused on the forensic challenges posed by emerging technologies, everything from smart medical devices to connected vehicles. She's also appeared on BBC One's Frontline Fightback, sharing her expertise on how digital technology is helping to fight crime. So in this episode, we're going to be diving into the world of digital forensics, what it actually involves, how it supports criminal investigations, the challenges investigators face in an increasingly digital world, and what the future might hold for the profession. So thank you so much for joining us today, Rachael. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's an honour to be appearing on the podcast.
It's an honour to have you here.
You're an official insider.
Yeah. To get us started, Rachael, for people who aren't really familiar with the field or the term, what exactly is digital forensics?
It's quite an interesting one because often what I find is that I'll say to people, I'm in digital forensics, and people will go, oh, you can fix my computer then, can you? And they almost think I'm like a technician or something. And I'm like, no, that's not what we do, So yeah, there is definitely that, lack of understanding, but I guess it's such a developed pace at the moment. So loads of people will understand it more as it sort of moves forward. But essentially, digital forensics is the process of identifying, preserving, and extracting data from digital devices that can assist in criminal investigations. And that's essentially what I was doing then when I was working in the private sector and doing various different cases for various police forces throughout the UK.
What kind of cases did you actually work on then as a digital forensic investigator?
So there was various different cases that you'd work on. So you sort of split them into two. So you've got cyber-enabled, which is what they treat as traditional crimes that have now a digital element. So that's things like stalking, murder, drugs, things like that, where a lot of those cases now can have that digital element. And then you have the cyber-dependent crimes, which are things like hacking and have to be done with technology. So you'd have a mixture of cases and things that you'd have to investigate, but mostly it was related more to, sounds horrible, but indecent images of children and that element of things.
It is fascinating. Do you think that these days there are many crimes that don't have a digital element?
No, I was actually reading yesterday a statistic that said that 90% of crimes now incorporate a digital element. So that just goes to show where digital forensics is going, especially because you have the cyber-enabled and cyber-dependent. It's crossed both boards, isn't it? So it's going to play a massive aspect then within criminal investigations.
It's huge, isn't it? I remember when we were at university, way back when, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, of course.
We, of course, did a digital forensics module, so we got some understanding of it. But even since then, and us being crime scene investigators, I think digital forensics has just grown massively. And I don't know if we'll get to the point where it potentially takes over traditional forensics, potentially. What do you think?
Oh, I got to be careful now of your viewers and who's watching. I don't want to offend anyone. But I think it is going to be really important. It is really important right now, and I think it will continue to grow just in the way that we are using technology and how much data can actually be gathered from that to support criminal investigations. I think the key thing about it is going to be not sort of treating it as, oh, we've got these sort of cyber people in a separate department that deal with the digital side of things, but actually incorporating that into everybody's thought processes who works within law enforcement and understanding how much data you can actually get from digital. I think there will still be a place for traditional, so it's okay. They're all safe at the moment.
All safe at the minute.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It is about integrating it, isn't it? Because often with devices, we would probably do whatever we needed to do without interfering with turning it on or off. So if we needed to take DNA or fingerprints, we'd do that first, but then we'd send it off for digital. But I think that it used to just be one bloke in a cupboard somewhere that nobody really knew. Like, it would just go off, wouldn't it, Dee? And it'd be like, oh, it's gone to digital. And you'd be like, okay.
Yeah, I think it is that idea. Like when you do say cyber or digital, I think people's thought processes are that sort of hooded character with the hood up and just sort of on the keyboard doing their thing in a little cupboard or something. And of course, that's sort of changing now. We have massive teams that can help with this. But one of the things that we actually have experienced, I guess, is trying to embed that within, police officers, everybody, to just understand that, or actually, if you're a crime scene, that could hold some relevant data, and maybe preserving that in the best possible way until that hooded character comes in and comes and sort of, do the digital element of it.
I think it's going to be more about integrating those teams, isn't it? And working together, particularly as there's more and more devices that we can gather data and intelligence from.
Yeah. And also, I was just going to say, it's same on the flip side as well, is that we've had instances where digital sort of come in and we have to investigate that, but actually they need fingerprints off that mobile phone first and these elements as well. So as digital forensic investigators, we need to be aware of that as well and preserving that evidence from your side. So I think that collaboration is what's going to really strengthen forensic science overall.
Yeah, most definitely. Can you tell our listeners what digital forensics involves, like day to day? So paint a picture of what an investigation might look like from the minute a device lands on your desk.
Yeah, so it depends on the situation, the crime, all of this different elements. But if it's a case of something's been seized, say an officer's done it, or they've sort of handed over a mobile phone, for example, that lands on your desk. At that point, then we're working through various stages. So you would have the first stage of being almost like pre-imaging is what we call it. So before you acquire the device, you'll take pictures and document everything about that device. So that could be damage, serial numbers, color, make, all those sort of elements. And then once that's done, you then move on to the acquisition, or what we also call imaging, where you're taking a bit-by-bit copy of that device. So ideally, what you want is a bit-by-bit copy, and once you've got that, you never work on the original device again. So you'll always work on the copy just to sort of maintain evidential integrity, essentially, in case, it was corrupt or something. There are some caveats in that, but I'll mention that in a second. And then once you've done that, you'll then be looking at the analysis and the examination of the evidence or the data that's been extracted. And then what you're looking at is finding some evidence that relates to the crime, whatever that might be that you're investigating, presenting that within an expert witness report, and then eventually, if it ends up in court, then going to court as an expert witness as well. But there are some caveats. So it could be, for example, if you were at a crime scene and there's a computer powered on, well, if you turned that computer system off, then you would lose the volatile data. So the volatile data is the data within typically like the RAM, so the random access memory. And what that means is as soon as power is disconnected, that will start deleting the data. And of course, what we don't want then is data being deleted. So it might be, instead of creating a bit-by-bit copy, it might be that you actually interact with that system, but you have to have permission for that, and you have to maintain your contemporaneous notes, documentation around your actions and the justification of doing that as well. And you can also get a capture of the volatile data that you investigate later on. Also, once you've done that, you can then power the device down. But the main thing about that bit really is that you have permission and you're documenting everything, because it could lead to further questions. The reason why you do that is you'll get things like people, and I don't want to scare people now, because I always feel like when I say this, I scare people, is people sometimes go on like private browsing, for example, doing whatever they want to do, right? And they think that's gone. As soon as we've closed that browser, that's gone. In actual fact, it's within that volatile memory, basically, and that data is still there, and we can get that. Same as things like encryption keys. So where they're sort of encrypting files, for example, or folders, keys will actually be stored within the RAM as well. So we can get those keys, and then we can use that to unlock encrypted files and folders and things like that. So it is really important, and that's something that you definitely don't want to lose then by just, pulling the plug. And I think when I was a student, many years ago too, it definitely was the case at that point of, computer system on, pull the plug.
Yeah.
And that was the official rule. As sort of time's progressed, I think the understanding around volatile data has also changed, and they're now going, actually, that's not the best practice, and we've got all these other methods that we can do. You just expect more questions when it comes to court on you actually interacting with that device. I hope that answers your question.
Does. I find it a little bit terrifying. I find the whole digital
Terrifying
world a bit terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying and absolutely fascinating. Can I ask, Rachel, as part of that, you were saying you have to get permission to do this. Who do you have to get permission from?
Typically, it would depend, because obviously I was in the private sector, but it would depend. So you could go to a senior digital forensic investigator, it might be a senior investigating officer, or OIC, so officer in charge. It's somebody that basically goes, I understand the risks, and I'm happy for you to continue with that. And sometimes it is just that balance of, do we want to do that? Do we not? Does it help answer our questions? There's other things to consider as well, is that, okay, there might be a laptop that's powered on, but do you have other devices that you think all the evidence is on there? Do we need to do that then? So, there's different circumstances where yes and no might play, that balancing act, I guess.
What kind of devices are you looking at as a digital investigator? What can you get evidence from?
Pretty much everything.
This is why it's terrifying. I'm disturbed by the private browser, note to self.
What are you up to?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, this is it. I always feel like when people ask and I say that, and people do just suddenly go, I'm going to start throwing my devices out the window or something, but yeah, pretty much anything. Obviously, there's caveats to it, because cybersecurity does have to play a role in it. So as you'll know, I'm sure you've got your phones, and you'll have updates made to those phones, and that will maybe have some security mechanisms included within that. Well, that could prove then to be a challenge for us in forensics, essentially, to try and bypass those security mechanisms to try and get that data. But other than that, if it's just a case of what devices could we get evidence from, everything. So laptops, phones being, the main thing at the moment. We're actually seeing phones is the leading digital device, where back in the day, it was computer systems and laptops. But I guess everybody's using their phones, and it has so much capability these days that it's naturally has taken the lead. But other things, what we call IoT, so Internet of Things, so Alexas, cameras that might be connected, Ring doorbells, things like that. Also vehicles. I know at the beginning you mentioned about the vehicle research. So vehicle system forensics is something that's really growing, and the understanding that before you might look at a road mark and sort of investigate that and those sort of elements, which is great, but actually the way that vehicles now, especially modern ones, how much technology they have, plays a massive role then within digital forensics as well. So it's also that element's coming together to try and produce as much evidence and data as they possibly can to help with that investigation. So yeah, not to scare you, but pretty much everything.
See, it is a bit scary, I think. And because we've talked about your PhD before, which sounds absolutely fascinating, especially around the vehicle crime stuff. And we were actually shocked by how much data you can recover from a vehicle. And it made me want to go and get an old banger with no digital stuff in it, like at all. How much of it is data and for safety and to aid investigations? How much is it for control and spying? I suppose it's thinking about the difference between data collection and people's privacy, isn't it? And are there any fine lines in there, do you think?
Yes. And I think the debate is always there. People are always talking about that fine line. What I always say as well is that sometimes what people think, oh, this is great from a user experience perspective. So this technology, it's collecting this data, for example, sending it back to that company, and that will help customize that experience for you, for example.
Yeah.
Me as a digital forensic person will then look at that and go, oh, that's actually data that I could recover and use for my forensic and investigation purposes. So it's also sort of like how you look at it. And that's been something that's quite interesting. A lot of people go, oh, service, and that's going to make it better and for the user experience and everything. And that's great. My mindset goes, data, yes, digital forensic investigations. But I guess the other thing is people understanding how much data is actually being collected. So, for example, my friend, she bought a brand new car, lovely, said, do you want to come for a spin in the car? Yeah, of course I do. Went in there and I started talking about, oh, do you know that it collects this data? And I'm just being into geek mode, I guess. And she was totally terrified. I really thought she was going to return the car, like that sort of level. But I think people aren't even thinking about it, and fair play to her, she's not within cyber and digital, but it hadn't even crossed her mind. And she was just so happy with all the tech and the smoothness and all of this sort of stuff that actually that aspect hadn't crossed her mind until I said, and then she looked terrified.
And I really don't think it does for a lot of people. That's the thing.
No.
I don't think people recognize how much data and information is being collected from the digital interactions that we have daily and from all of our devices. I remember I got a new car and I got it from a Ford dealership, and they were like, oh, if you download the Ford app, and it can help you, when you need a new service, if your tires go flat, it can give you all this information. At first I thought, oh, great. And so I downloaded it. And then I realized how much information it was collecting, like where I was going and how much mileage I was doing. And I thought, this is spyware. Like, I'm not having it. So I actually deleted the app. And then I had a problem with the car and I took it down to Ford. And they were talking about the app. And I said, oh, no, I've deleted the app. And she said, it doesn't matter. I can still see everything you've been doing and where you've been going here on the back end. And I was really mad about that.
Yeah.
And I don't think people do realize at all.
No, they don't at all. And we hear that a lot. And especially if you think, not to go in the AI route now, but a lot of people now using AI and they're putting, business details in there and all sorts of information. And are you actually thinking about where that's going and who's seeing that? It's just one of those things that people are not thinking about until somebody says, and then at that point they're looking terrified and want to throw everything away.
Yeah. Go back to binary, please. Ones and zeros for us. Well, not for you, Rachel. You'd be gutted.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
don't. Do you think there's any type of digital evidence that people would be really shocked that was being collected?
I'm not too sure. I think across the board, there's just so much data that people don't think about. I guess, obviously, I've done a lot with vehicle research, and then recently I've sort of looking into medical. So looking at what we call IOMT, so being Internet of Medical Things. So looking at all this data that's being collected and how's that stored. But also, if then, it was attacked by some criminal, how is that actually being investigated and so on and so forth. So I think, with that in mind at the moment, maybe the health data that's actually collected and the devices that are being used and the systems in place, then I think people might then be a bit scared, because I think maybe you just have that trust in your health data's fine. You would surely have everything in place, but actually there's a lot of considerations that you have to think about and understand what data you're actually given, especially with all these apps, all these different devices that people can use.
Is there anything that we shouldn't hand over? Like, what data would you not give over?
It's so difficult because people ask me this and a part of me wants to go, don't give over anything. Don't do it. It's just like, don't do it. But we live in such a modern age that it's impossible to live that way. I mean, say impossible if you go and live some forest in a little hut or something like that and not interact at all. So it is really impossible that. But what I think is the main thing is what I call digital curiosity. So having a mindset of asking those questions and understanding the processes in place before you suddenly just hand over that data. And I'll give a prime example for vehicle actually is basically hire cars. So the amount of hire cars, I often obviously have hire cars when I'm going to conferences and training and things like that. And there'll often be profiles of people that have had the cars before me, and that data is still on there. Now, most people would not know how to get that data off.
Yeah.
I plugged in USB, acquired that data pretty quick, literally within a minute. And if I wanted to, could go through all that data. It wasn't difficult to do. It's a quick YouTube. And obviously I never went through that data, but that thought process hasn't even crossed that person's mind. But on top of that, what about the responsibility to the organization giving out this hire car? Shouldn't they be making sure that that data is deleted before they then give that to the next person when it is trying to make sure that they understand that as well? So now whenever I have a hire car, I just don't connect my phone. I don't do anything. I'm going on deleting anything that I do on there and things like that as well. But I think where the responsibility lies, isn't it? Yes, it's with the individual, but it's with an organisation as well.
Yeah, because surely a lot of that's covered under GDPR as well.
Yeah, this is exactly it. So it seems to be a bit of a grey area. There is some research happening with that at the moment, but I guess it's learning from things, isn't it?
Yeah.
I bet you that side of it is something that hire car companies don't even consider because, like you say, it's that sort of data that people don't think about that's even being recorded in the first place.
Yeah, literally. I always say, especially like to students, you don't know what you don't know. So if they've never even thought about it, it takes somebody to go and say, and I've had it many a times where somebody says something to me and I go, oh my God, I've never thought about it like that. And it made such sense when they said it, but it just takes that person to go and say it.
Yeah. That's exactly it, isn't it?
So we mentioned in the introduction that you've done quite a lot of casework and you've worked on some major cases nationally. Are there any cases that really stand out for you for any reason?
There's not necessarily individual cases that stand out. I've always sort of been interested in when I'm doing a case, like the mindset of people, and I'm just like, oh, well, why are they like this, and sort of querying that. But one in particular, actually, this one was a really interesting one. And essentially what it was somebody that was suspected of viewing indecent images of children, those sort of elements. And to be honest, and it sounds horrific, but that's something that a normal case that would come in quite a lot that we would work on. So it didn't seem anything out of the ordinary at that point, which is such a weird thing to say. And I'm sure you've got many cases where you say things and you think, what a weird thing to say in my life.
Our normal's not the normal for most people, is it?
This is it. And then with that, then, as I was sort of going through there was a lot of written stories, essentially, and what I could only describe as like fantasies. And I'm sort of reading this, and it's then whether trying to determine, is this a fantasy that they would never action, or is this something that is more like a plan? And as I was sort of continuing that investigation, then essentially it was very clear that it was a plan rather than just a fantasy that they were writing out. And what was really interesting is to try and identify the victims. They were actually using social media for that. So they were using Facebook, Instagram, things like that. And what they had done is they had identified this couple with a young child and was targeting basically that they were planning to kidnap that child and live out this fantasy essentially. And what they were doing is creating almost like a timeline of events of that person or those parents' activities and where they normally go. Oh, so on a Tuesday evening, that child's at that club and things like that. So they were building an idea of their everyday functions, I guess, and an idea of where they live, the surrounding area, these sort of things. And from that, then further investigations led into the fact that they were actually then talking to other paedophiles. So it was a part of a paedophile ring, and they were essentially then going to go and kidnap this child. They'd had it all planned out, and that was just based on information that the parents unknowingly to them were putting out there, but not understanding the risks around that. Fortunately, I did get hold of the police force straight away, spoke to the officer in charge and was like, this is the person that's been identified, these are the parents, this is the child, like, go and put some safety mechanisms in place. Because at that time, that individual was actually on bail. So the considerations around that, especially because you've got the backlog of digital forensics now. So I guess, earlier on we talked about digital forensics and where that's going. There's a massive backlog at the moment of digital forensic cases, just because it's grown so rapidly in such a short space of time. And there's just so many different devices and things to consider, and that takes time. So they're released on bail, but what are they doing in the meantime? And pre that investigation, yes, talking to them and the police doing their thing and so on, they weren't aware of these parents and this child being targeted, and potentially there could be a kidnapping that's going to happen. And then that's when we then got straight on the phone to try and put some security mechanisms in place, but also ask, why are they on bail? At that point, it's a question that, should be asked during that investigation. But sometimes you could be looking at a year, 2 years to do a full digital forensic investigation.
A year to 2 years, that's quite a long time, isn't it? Why does it take that long?
It's just the amount of digital devices, I think, is one element of it. Say if it was a household, right?
Yeah.
You go into a household, and if you just think of how many digital devices like you might have in your house, if we were to seize all of that, that's huge amounts of data that we have to go through. And on top of things like, if you do have challenges, like say if it was a damaged device and we're struggling to get an acquisition or an image, then we need to cater for that as well and look at other options and things we've got to do from that perspective, which could be repair it, could be another type of acquisition or method that we might use to investigate it. So you get those elements. I think even though there has been an increase in digital forensic skill set, it's still behind, and that needs to continue to develop essentially. So you've got that element as well. And I think ultimately it just comes down to the amount of devices now. I know I'm in digital and cyber, but if you go into my house and how many USBs I've got on the side and computers and even things like Xbox, PlayStations, things like that, external hard drive, phones, I'm sure other people do have that drawer with several old phones of the previous models that they've got. And might want to have a look at that and things like that as well. So it is a massive issue. And on top of that, the data storage these days as well. When I first started, it was fairly small at that point. Now, terabytes or what they call zettabytes and things like that is pretty standard now.
I've not heard of a zettabyte.
No, me either.
That's a new one for me.
Yeah. And also the other considerations as well of cloud platforms. So, we're all using cloud in some capacity. How are we getting that data from the cloud when actually that data is stored anywhere in the world as well?
It's not a wonder it's taking so long. So then how do you balance it between, because in some investigations you don't have 2 to 3 years. Like that one you were working on, there was a kidnapping that was being planned out that was going to take place. Like that can't be afforded 2 to 3 years, can it?
No.
How do you find that balance?
They do try and put priority classifications. So you would sort of have red, amber. So it might be that, right, you've got all these cases that come in, we need to prioritize this one. And I guess with that one in particular that I was talking about is, and again, it sounds horrible, but it didn't seem out of the ordinary of an indecent image, and it can sort of escalate in the classification if there were, children involved. If that person had children or worked in a school or access to children, it would then increase. If it's just accessing material and looking at images, while it's bad, obviously, the severity of it, they think, well, that's not impacting a real child right now. So we've got a murder here. We need to look at this murder, for example. And it is that, unfortunately, I guess, because of we need more sort of expertise in this and more people in this and resources that we have to do that. And we have to create that prioritization. However, with that then, once that was identified and on the phone, I guess, alarmed that straight away, the classification completely changed at that point. But yeah, you do have cases that could be there for a few years. And what I would say is different forces are different. So some don't have a backlog at all, which is great. And other forces have 18 months, 2 years, 3 years to go through it all. And the other thing as well, I guess from the flip side, is I've also done another case where a guy was accused of stalking and harassment by this woman. And we were investigating that. It didn't seem particularly dangerous, or the police were saying there doesn't seem to be any serious harm. However, because of the time frame that took, unfortunately, the gent actually went and committed suicide.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I had a phone call to say, unfortunately, he's committed suicide. He worked near a motorway, just jumped straight off the bridge, basically.
And that was from the accusations of the stalking and harassment that he was saying were unfounded, and he couldn't cope with those accusations.
Yeah, so basically he was accused, and as we were investigating, because that takes time, I guess he felt like there was that tarnish, mud sticks, I guess. And he ultimately went and did that. And I sort of said at that point, do you want me to continue the investigation? What would you like me to do? And they said, yes, continue that investigation. So I continued it and nothing was found.
Oh, so sad.
That's devastating.
Yeah. So, and they did say at the time, does that mean he's innocent? And I sort of said at that time, well, it's not, I can't say he's innocent, but what I can say is that there's no evidence to suggest he was guilty. Without that evidence, who knows? So it might possibly have just been a young gent has been accused of something by a female, and the waiting and trying to live with that on a day-to-day was just too much for him. And so I'm questioning at that point, what's the protection mechanisms as well?
Yeah.
Because you do get people who say there's no smoke without fire. So regardless, once that accusation's made, it does stick with people.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I guess as well with that, I got thinking about the whole time frame. If he could have had an answer quicker and that been resolved quicker, could we essentially have saved him? Sounds terrible, but would that have helped him knowing this will be done in 6 weeks rather than 3 years?
3 years, yeah. Because that is a heavy weight to have hanging over you for a couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. So, it does go both ways as well in this time frame, is that yes, from criminal and if they're guilty, but actually if they're innocent as well, goes that way too.
And I suppose much like us in traditional forensics, you let the evidence lead.
Yeah, definitely.
You talking there about seeing a lot of indecent images and saying that actually that's a big part of digital investigations. And then you've also co-authored work on the mental health impact for digital forensic investigators, because I don't think people realise or think about digital investigators either as being repeatedly exposed to disturbing material as part of their jobs. How do you think that the mental health of digital investigators is impacted, and is much being done in the industry to put in some safeguarding around that?
Yeah, so there is sort of mechanisms in place, and I think there's an understanding around, what you're being exposed to, which is great. And you might have therapy, for example, depending on the force, or if you're in the private sector, it could be sort of once a month, once every fortnight, which is great. And you'll also get things like, if you've had a particularly bad case, then you might go and work on something else, which could be like a repairing of a phone or something. So you're not then just like, oh, next case and just dealing with that all of the time. So, there are mechanisms in place. Do I think it can be improved? Yes, I think it can. I think that it's a very difficult thing to be exposed to all the time. And it's very difficult as well. I would come home at the end of the day and my other half go, have a good day at work. What did you do? And you're like, sort of thing. So you can't really talk about it. And I guess the idea as well is of transference. So one of the things we were always told, and I'm sure you were as well with traditional, is that people will build a picture in their mind. So if you describe something, they will build that picture, and that can be quite triggering as well. And you also don't know what everybody else has been through in their lives, and you've got to think of that. So I definitely think it can be improved, and I think a little bit more recognition around it, I think is needed. But there are some tools out there that are helping with it. What used to happen was you would categorize the images. So there would be a cat A, cat B, cat C. when it relates to sort of child offences. And what used to happen is you would categorise it, but the image wouldn't disappear. So it'd still just stay on your screen essentially, and you would see all the other images. What happens now, once you've categorised it, is it basically blurs it out. So you don't see
Okay.
it constantly. So that's pretty good, and there's definitely movement forward with that. I think as well, I'm not a parent right now, but I've definitely worked with people that have then had children and suddenly really struggle with it. And I think the support then around, life events, having children, things like that, and then working on these cases, there needs to be a bit
Yeah.
more support around that as well. Because I have seen people really get triggered once, come back from maternity or paternity and that first case, and all of a sudden you have a child yourself and you understand that love just, yeah.
Changes perspective, doesn't it? I think it's really interesting because I think that mental health on the front line was not taken seriously for a long time. I think that there's been great strides in terms of frontline response. I think that it's also improved for crime scene investigators. However, it is still lagging behind those frontline officers. And then digital forensics, I think, is another layer again, because I don't know if people sometimes consider it as frontline,
Yep.
even though that's exactly what it is. And I think because you're not always necessarily going to the scene, I don't know if it's being considered in the same way, but actually you are seeing horrific stuff over and over again.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that they did introduce quite a few years ago, what would used to happen is you would provide that image basically, and that would go to court and all those sort of elements. What they then started to do was not show these images within court because it was basically impacting jury and the people that were in court. Absolutely fine, fair enough. So what happened then was then us as digital forensic investigators would have to write descriptions of what was in that
Right.
video or what was in that image. So there would be times where there would be, a video played and I would literally be sat there typing on a Word document exactly what was happening. And of course, if that video is going too fast, I'm like, 1 minute, rewind it a minute.
Go
And it's that
back.
constant replaying it. And then also writing it, it's almost like treated several parts of your brain. So you're visually seeing it and now you're
Yeah.
describing it as well. And I think that was quite difficult at the time. And I totally get it from a courtroom perspective. But yeah, definitely, when you think about it from that and you're constantly seeing that and you're
Yeah.
writing it, it is quite traumatic. And ironically, I was talking to a therapist before and she was like, I hear all sorts of different things in my job, but she was like, I don't see it. And she was saying like the impact that could have on you, seeing that constantly. And it does. I think some people are better at sort of segmenting it than other
Yeah.
people, but it's
Yeah.
just different people and making sure then that, they're supported as much as possible.
I think that writing it out must be really difficult because it's one thing to see something, but for us as investigators, even us as crime scene investigators, you see something horrific, but you're not just seeing it, you're looking at it in depth and you're trying to notice every part of it in detail. So that's a lot anyway. But for me, I find if you write things, sometimes it's quite difficult to write things that are traumatic. So then to be looking at that in detail and having to write it out, I can imagine that being really impactful for you.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm not going to say it's sort of like terrible with the mental health aspect because there has been massive improvements in the last few years. So that is great, and it's definitely considered a lot more. But I think we've got further to go with that to support people in the best possible way.
Yeah. Just going back to the court aspect, I think that it's so important for us not to traumatize jurors, of course. And there's a lot of stuff that people just don't want to see. I think that people sometimes walk around in their lives and they don't recognize how much of this stuff goes on, and sometimes so close to home as well. And of course, you don't want to traumatize people, but I sometimes think, how do you get people to understand the trauma and impact that they've caused to the victim and their families in the same
Yeah.
vein?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And I think as well is one of the things with court is is very difficult is, yes, you're explaining that, but you're also trying to explain the digital element of it to people that might not understand as well.
Yeah.
So they try to get their head around the sort of digital forensics and all the processes and things in place with that, and then also the impact that that has by not showing it and just doing description of it. And yeah, I think a lot of people walk around with blinkers on and not realise. And of course, though, they've got to think about the well-being of the jury. And I think that was where a lot of this come from, is that they essentially then was also providing like mental health services then to the jury, because they would be traumatized by what they would have seen.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? And it's striking that balance. I remember we've had a crime scene manager on before who was talking about this in court, and she was saying for her it was a really horrendous murder she'd been involved with. And again, they're not allowed to show the photographs because they don't want to traumatise the jury. But she was saying having pictures, like a drawn picture, it just doesn't really show the gravity of what's actually happened. So how do you get across this is how bad this was without traumatizing? But sometimes are people really getting the full understanding of what's actually gone on just from a description or a drawing?
Yeah, this is it. I think it's almost like the shock factor, isn't it? By showing a picture or an image, just like, oh my God, and it makes it, I guess, a little bit more realistic for them to then make their decisions.
Yeah, that's it.
I suppose great strides are being made in terms of the 3D virtual tours that can be done these days without actually being in it. Like reproductions of them, can't there?
Yeah.
Sticking with court, you've been an expert witness in court.
Yes. It was great fun.
Said no one ever about court.
Brilliant. How did you find it?
When you're a student and there's that idea of court, you know, I'm sure you had it as well. You're like, oh God, could I really do that? Like, is that really where I'm going to end up going? But I actually, and it might just sound really bad, but I would go and I would be like, let's go and do this. Like, where I think a lot of people were quite like scared. And I was nervous, don't get me wrong, but I was also just like, this is so cool. Sort of thing. And
I love
like,
that.
I'm like on a TV show or something, and that sort of thing. But yeah, it is quite intense. But in my head, I just thought, go up, present what you need to present, give the information that you need to give, and answer the questions and leave. It's not your decision. It's not down to you. You just do and explain exactly what you did in that investigation. The rest is down to them, is how I sort of see that.
Really good way to look at it. But what about the defence?
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. I remember the first time I went to court and moved from prosecution to defence. Defence looked to me, and I'm that person that I like did a little smirk of like nervousness, sort of thing, and just like, please like me, sort of, don't be too hard on me.
Don't be mean.
Yeah, and they had the most like stern face, and I was like, Rachel, stop smiling, stop smirking. Like, this is not the place. They're not going to be your friends afterwards. Like,
But please.
But I was cross-examined and things were questioned, and some cases they, would be a couple of questions, and it was more sort of confirmation of things and maybe sort of lack of understanding, and then other times it was completely brutal. And I think a lot of people as well could leave and almost feel like, I don't know, a bit bullied maybe, or a bit sort of like their confidence knocked and like almost question, oh, should I be doing this? I clearly don't know much about this. They just ripped me apart or whatever, But again, when I left and after that, I just thought I presented as well as I could. I'll continue to learn and I'll just do better next time. I just tried to keep that sort of mindset that within digital, are you ever going to know everything? No. And there's that key thing as well. And I know, like in the introduction, you said expert. And when you say that as well, a lot of, I don't mean you, but I just mean in general, when people say that, a lot of people go, oh my God, I'm going to court as an expert. I'm not an expert. And they start questioning that. And somebody once said to me, an expert is just the person who knows the most about it in the room. Right. Yeah, and I thought, actually, I really like that, because I am the one there with the digital forensic mindset, and I am the one who did the case. So just tell them what I know, and that's it. So I've always tried to keep that in mind. Otherwise, just water off a duck's back, just let it go.
There's some great top tips there for anybody that's going to have to
It
go to court
is.
anytime soon. I love that. I wish I'd spoken to you before I went to court.
I know, yeah, that mindset's brilliant. What a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I do try and say to students, obviously, the BSc and the MSc in digital forensics, because I think that's something that comes up a lot, and I'm sure it does in traditional of that fear of court in the end. Like, you love the whole sort of science around it, but that
Yeah.
idea at the end that, oh my God, they could cross-examine me. But so we try and give that advice, but I ultimately just think, go and do your job best you can, learn from it, do better next time, and just keep that cycle going.
I love that.
It's fabulous. You know, Rachel, we haven't asked you, what actually attracted you to digital forensics? How did you get into it?
So, ironically, when I was actually in school, I was a bit of a daydreamer, really.
Were you?
Just a bit, yeah, I was just a bit plodding along through the different classes. And then I sort of left school and thinking, what am I going to do? But something that had stuck with me throughout sort of my whole life, really, from very young, I was like, I'm going to be in the police. That's what I want to do. You know, I'm going to fight crime and I'm going to be this sort of superhero and this sort of thing. And then when I left school, I was like, is that what I want to do? And then just some people said to me, you're really good with technology. You know, you're really good. You could just go on computer, do whatever. I was just like, oh, okay. And then randomly I come across digital forensics. And I thought, oh, actually, should I incorporate the law enforcement side of me with the digital side of me and bring that together? But what I did initially was I actually went to college and did just general sort of computing.
Yeah.
And elements of that, then there were various different things, so like website design and all this sort of stuff, but elements of it was digital forensics and cybersecurity. And with that module, then I just completely fell in love. I was just like, this is completely me. And then I looked into universities and went to University of South Wales, so they clearly just can't get rid of me. Yeah. I went there, did my BSc in digital forensics, and then I went on and did my MSc, my master's in digital forensics, and I went out to industry, done that for a few years, and then went back and did my PGC so I could teach the next generation, essentially. And then they said, fancy a PhD? And I was like, why not?
Why not? You've kind of gone full circle with University of South Wales from studying there to now running the courses. What made you want to move over into academia from practice?
I love the sort of practice side of things, but I think I'm also somebody that likes to jump between things. Clearly, ADHD from a young age was clearly there. And with the university, what they were able to offer was outreach, for example. So doing some outreach, conferences. Also, you could get seconded to different sort of digital forensic teams as well. You can do commercial work. So, for example, I went and volunteered as well in Tarion Regional Organised Crime Unit. So I went there and still sort of kept my hand in with the digital side of things, which is great because that then feeds back into the teaching element as well. Yeah. The research and, you know, and all these different opportunities. And I think, you know, while being out there every day was amazing and great, I think just the ability to know, like, oh, I can just go and do this today and go and do that, just suited my mindset and my sort of brain and how it functions a lot better. So it's very different every day. Yesterday, PhD interviews all day, looking at, you know, different aspects and speaking to different people. Today, obviously, podcasts and things like that. And then it could be exam boards and marking and those sort of elements as well. But I guess the biggest thing also is I just love talking to people. And sometimes with digital forensics, you are, like what we said earlier, in that cupboard doing things. But I'm like, people, come and speak to me. I want to talk to people, you know?
I want to natter.
Yeah. So it was great. And it's definitely helped me, my career. And just the fact that I can still keep my hand in so many pots now, I love that element of it.
Because, of course, you've got your PhD, your course leader for the BSc and MSc, but you've also just been published in a book and you also run a business as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Co-run.
Yeah, co-runs. So I've just submitted the book, which ironically goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is sort of bridging the gap. It's literally called Bridging the Gap between policing, cybersecurity and digital forensics. So we've just
Fantastic.
submitted that now. So that's gone off for review. But they've said that that would be published then within sort of 6 months. That will officially go out. So there's various things in there that's covered from, again, the collaborative aspect, but frameworks, governance, compliance of digital forensics, the technical abilities within there, cybersecurity, types of devices, types of attacks, all sorts of different things. Not that I'm just doing a selling pitch here, 6 months time, I'll send you the link to buy it.
We will of course buy it.
So yeah, we've got that, and obviously I had a paper published yesterday as well about where we interviewed various police officers throughout the UK and trying to understand what their understanding is around digital as well. And there are, again, great sort of movements in that element, but there's also things that need to be developed. So we're sort of looking at that, and that was phase 1, and then we're going to be looking at the next phase. Just things like AI generated content. So how are we actually then going to handle this within the digital forensic world? How are police officers going to understand that and understand that an image that's presented to you doesn't necessarily mean that that's a legit image and that's actually happened? And we have had some students that have done some research on this, and they've placed their friend or their brother in videos where it's seen they're stealing from shops and things like that, when in actual fact, they're not. It's all just AI, and all of a sudden,
Terrifying.
yeah, a police going to understand that. This is where we're sort of trying to bridge that gap, I guess, and give that awareness and training and competence. And then I'm also working with another company who essentially works trying to help with the revenge porn aspect. And we're currently doing a paper on sextortion. So looking at the advice around that.
Revenge porn and sextortion. What's
Yeah.
revenge porn?
So revenge porn is essentially, it was something that was criminalized in 2015, and it's essentially where two people might send, intimate images or whatever that might be, and they then could break up or something like that, and that person will send that out, put it onto the internet, or send that to various groups as well and share that material. And we've seen it happen. I've done casework on it where there was a woman and a gent, and basically she'd sent an image, and then afterwards their sort of relationship broke up, and he decided to send it to everybody in her son's school, within parenting groups and things like that, put it all over the internet, put it on some porn sites and things. And the battle then to try and get that taken down from those porn sites, because that can be shared, was really difficult. And then he did actually continue and start posting her address as well all over the internet, and basically saying that she was going to offer sexual services. So she would have people knocking at her door, and she felt very unsafe.
That's horrendous.
Awful.
Yeah, and then sextortion. So again, another case I worked on, a young gent, I guess sort of 17, 18, talking to a girl on a dating app, sent a video of himself, and obviously a rude video of himself, sent that to her, and she basically said, unless you pay me this much money, I will be putting this out onto the internet. I've got your mum, sister, cousins, dad, whatever, on Facebook. I will be sending that to all your family members as well. And what actually is the case most of the time is that person, that female that you think you're talking to, isn't actually that person. It's somebody completely different. And then unfortunately they pay that money hoping that would never, go out. So that's a massive issue as well. And there was a documentary on it not long ago. And unfortunately, while revenge porn seems to be for women more than men, seems to happen to women more than men, sextortion seems to happen to men more than women. And what has been seen is an increase of suicides and things like that because of this happening to them. So again, it's a massive area. So yeah, me and this other company called Image Angel met the woman who runs it, and completely amazing the work she does. So we're currently working on a paper for that to try and get some more information and advice out on that, because at the moment, if you look at it online, the advice is don't send the image. which is great. Yes, that is some sort of advice, but are you going to stop people doing that forever? No, there needs to be more sort of processes in place. So we're looking at that as well.
People are
then,
so
yes,
cruel, aren't they? And
Yeah.
especially the revenge porn. Like I say, I'd not heard that term before. It's new to me. I know now you've talked about it in context. I know it happens, but I hadn't
Yeah.
heard it under that term. And you think you're in a trusting relationship and you do things like that intimately between partners, but for then someone to use it like that afterwards, it blows my mind.
Yeah, and
awful.
what we have seen is some people will actually threaten it. So it's been sort of reported where somebody might come and report to the police, say, you know, my ex and said they're going to send this picture out. When you go and speak to that person, what they then say is, I'm never going to do it. It was just a joke. It's like,
It's not funny.
Not funny.
It's really
no,
not
it's
funny.
like, it's not a joke. This is, again, just one paper of many. So going to be a long trail after this because it's such a complex area. And you could look at things like AI. Again, there's a massive growth of these apps where essentially you take a picture of somebody or you get a picture from Facebook and then it can remove their clothes, for example, and that can get shared out then. It's not actually them, but of course other people might not recognize that. So this also creates issues with that, and that's definitely going to be something that is going to be massive when it comes down the line.
Do you think that AI is going to be a useful investigative tool, or do you think it introduces new risks, or both actually?
It's a bit of both. So AI I guess it's like anything, isn't it? Internet, it's great, and then it's got its downsides. But with AI, yes, we could see, I don't know, images, videos being made that might not be legit, and if that's presented as evidence, how do you determine that? You also then have AI that's used within investigation. So we already have that in place. So there could be something like, or there is something where you have images, for example, and you're essentially going, right, can you find all images in here that relate to number plates or weapons or nudity or whatever it might be? And it will go through all of that case file for you and it will pull all that data out for you to review. So that's
Right.
amazing, and especially when you think about what we were talking about earlier in the backlog, is
And the
that
amount of work to get through. Yeah.
having that ability is amazing. On the flip side of that, again, is do you trust that it's pulled out everything that it needs to have pulled out? So do you still need that human element to go through everything anyway? And we have seen it that, say we're looking for passports, for example, and we click, right, passports, look for everything that relates to passports. And then it will pull, I don't know, a piece of paper that's, just got some text on it and it thinks that that's a passport. And those sort of inconsistencies, I guess, is what's happening. So you definitely still need that human element. And currently, right now, there is guidance on AI within digital forensics and investigating it, but there's no standard process. There's no sort of procedural document that states how to do it. What it actually states is, if you think it is AI, check the metadata, which is the data about data. So having a look at the file size and date created and those sort of things. If you suddenly see that it's a massive file size, potentially that could suggest it's AI. And then it says, once you've looked at that, what's your next step if you're still not sure? And it basically says, go to a senior member of staff and ask them to review it.
Wow.
But if they're not sure, what happens then? And does this then become a defense mechanism? Because you suddenly go, oh, that was AI, that's not real. And how are we going to prove that? And that's something that is really interesting. But so that's the next paper as well with that one on the side. So you've got that, and then co-founder of Positive Cyber Solutions as well. So the managing director, Emma Darby, she runs it on a day-to-day, which is great because I am way too busy
to be all over the place.
Way too busy for that. And essentially what she's doing is doing audits for organizations to make sure that they have the baseline of security to protect against criminal gangs that might target an organization. She will do that, and she's also providing training on sort of instant response. Essentially, she's there to help organizations stay secure, be proactive in their security mechanisms. If they are then attacked, to then help after that as well, and try and get the company up and running again as efficiently as possible.
It sounds amazing. Honestly, Rachel, I just don't know how you find the time in the day. I don't know how you find the energy. You're always running at 100 miles an hour. Bless you. Have a holiday. After this,
I
take a
know.
holiday.
Yeah. It's all right. I got one booked for July.
Excellent. I think you need
Brilliant.
it. We literally could talk to you all day. There's still so many questions. But I think to kind of round up this session, if somebody was interested in becoming a digital forensic investigator, would you recommend it for starters? And what advice would you give to them for getting in?
I would 100% recommend it. I love it. I breathe it. But I think you have to have that passion for it. I think that's really key, especially as we've mentioned, everything you're going to see. It is a lot of pressure going to court, and I try and keep cool about it, but it is a lot of pressure. And sometimes you can forget when you're doing this casework is that this is actually real people, and you know, these are real lives, and people are impacted by things that have happened. And you can easily forget that when you're behind a screen doing your digital forensic investigation. So I think passion, remembering that it is real people's lives, and I think having the ability to constantly learn. I think you need to constantly learn. And this is something that we say to students all the time, because what we don't want is, you know, somebody coming to do their degree or doing their masters going, oh, I'm an expert now.
I know it all.
No. Yeah, it's no, you know, we've prepared you to go out and you're going to get all that experience now, and you will build that. But know that every day a learning day. I've been in this for about 14 years now, and I'm still learning things. And you've got to keep in mind that because everything changes so quickly. So like we were just talking about AI and you know, vehicles as well changing, medical devices, looking at that obviously for my PhD at the moment. And there's huge strides in the healthcare sector as well on, you know, incorporating digital and how that's going to be protected, because ultimately healthcare data is the most sought after data. So more than banking, and a lot of people don't realize that as well. So you're just constantly learning all the time. And what we don't want is somebody going, I know it all, and that's it. You've got to have that mindset of being uncomfortable with not knowing and being happy to continue to learn. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure if I did.
You did. It's great advice. I'm just thinking, it's like you said, the field has changed so quickly. It's grown so rapidly, and technology is emerging just at an absolute rate. And then there's the number of areas, like you've said, where data can be extracted from.
Yeah, so you have digital forensics, and obviously that's a branch of forensic science essentially. And then within digital forensics, you'll have different branches within that as well. So network forensics, vehicle forensics, medical, IoT, you know, mobile, all of these different things. And I guess you could also specialize in one of those areas essentially. You also have, you know, open source intelligence as well. So that's massive, that's growing at the moment. There's another sort of branch of that. And again, what I always say is understand digital forensics fundamentals. And then if you want to branch into an area, that's great. And there's just so many different elements. And the other thing I want to say as well is that with digital forensics, a lot of people think digital forensics is law enforcement only. And, you know, my experience is law enforcement, and that's definitely where I've come from. But digital forensics within organizations now is really growing, because what they've realized is that when they are attacked, or even if, you know, something goes down, all their systems go down, having the ability to investigate that from a digital standpoint allows them then to recover and to get back to normal functioning. So, you know, I also, just to make it clear that digital forensic, yes, amazing for law enforcement, but also the business side of things as well is massively growing.
So a rapidly growing environment, emerging sector. So students out there, people with an interest, come on down. There's work at the end of it.
Yeah, there's definitely work at the end of it. And yeah, I just think the key thing really is just keep learning. Just keep learning, and know, you know, you're never at your peak. Essentially, there's always more things to learn, and it's only going to increase. It'll grow and grow, and there's plenty of opportunities. And yeah, of course, we've got the courses at the university. There's also courses, you know, online. There's different organisations that offer short courses. What I always say to people is just come talk to me. I can try and guide you and help you in, you know, which route you want to go to. So I'm always happy to talk to people, as you know.
Love that. And I also love the philosophy of just keep learning. I think that actually is something for everyday life for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, me too. Echo Ange, absolutely fascinating.
Great.
So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in for that episode. We hope you've enjoyed it as well. Remember, if you are enjoying, please subscribe, give us a review, or follow us on our social channels. We will be back in a fortnight's time where we will take you back under the barrier tape.